London, Mr. Johnson, if I may now. There seems to be a sense among some keen observers that ever since 1958, the country that is Guinea is paying a very hefty, if not heavy, price for independence from France, the general perception of which is one of punishment. Now, did you get that sense, and what can you tell us about the French legacy, and is it still wreaking havoc?
Well, yes, the French legacy has not necessarily been a very good one. French was the colonial masters of that small country, Guinea, and naturally they cut the country up, ignoring tribal and cultural lines, and that created a lot of aggravation and tension in that area. To cover that up, you also have the fact that when they became independent, Guinea, Sékou Touré at the time followed a socialist policy, and that social policy did not bring about the equality and did not eradicate poverty, especially so. And of course, when he passed away in 1984, the present junta, who's just literally passed away, LANSANA himself, ditched that policy and adopted a new policy. And I'm afraid Guinea is leaving and actually being part of the fact that the poverty is still a major problem. So the colonial masters affected that country quite badly, and what we're seeing is a reflection of that.
And Basandiku, now, to what extent do you think it's true that when the French and the colonial masters left Guinea, they actually withdrew all the expertise and assistance, for sure, in order to, in a way, perhaps make sure that the road ahead for that newly independent country would be a pretty steep, if not bumpy one? Now, how would you characterize that?
Well, yes.
You have to remember that in
Go ahead, New York.
Can you hear me?
Yes, New York, go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, you have to remember that in 1958, when General de Gaulle asked the African countries that they have to choose between freedom, independence, and remain under France control, Guinea, with Sékou Touré, was the only one that said, yes, we want our independence. And that cost them a lot because, as you pointed out, France have to end every single assistance they provide to that country. Mm-hmm. And Sékou Touré at that time was very, I have to say he was a leader in terms of saying no to France, who in 1958, France, who was the biggest when it's come to Francophone African countries. But when he came to power, there is no freedom. There is a little regard when it comes to human rights. And there is no opposition. And after he was dead in 1984, LANSANA Conte took over. As my friend in London pointed out, everybody was happy to see that there will be a change now. And after 24 years, and here we go, no change. You have a country who is very rich when it's come to minerals. So the underground is very wealthy, with poor people above it. And now I'm not surprised at all to see that the military also take over right after the death of LANSANA Conte, because this was predictable. You have the president that was very sick and wasn't in charge at all, and you have people surrounding him that was corrupt.
Do forgive the interruption.
And the army also was...
Before coming up to date, and I will pick you up on that, I want to still keep on discussing the pages of history, if you will, a little bit, and then we'll come up to the minute, if you like. Now, London, Ayo Johnson. Now, speaking of that enormous amount of natural God-given wealth bestowed on that country, and the fact that the country is among the poorest in the whole wide world, does it not come down to the fact that, well, it's obviously mismanagement, if not corruption, in the way the resources basically are being administered and controlled. But then again, irrespective of whoever becomes the president or assumes power in that country, we will be having this humongous challenge of how best, to the benefit of the people, hopefully these resources will be managed. And that has little to do with who's on top and has a lot to do with the inbred and, let's say, deep-seated culture of corruption. Now, how can that culture be duly combated?
Well, we've got to look at it two ways. Firstly, the culture that we're talking about, the corruption, and that has stemmed, one, from the tribal imbalance and shift that we had through colonialism. That's got to be accepted and respected as such, because mixing it up, choosing leaders, choosing tribes which, because of their numbers, would not necessarily have taken power, is a factor. But secondly, it's also the fact that Guinea has not had the ability to trade internationally. For all the wealth, as you've mentioned, being the minerals that you've talked about, we're talking about agriculture. They've not been able to compete on an even footing with the West. Their products have actually met with very high tariffs overseas. Locally, they've not been able to compete with a lot of products that are being dumped on their local markets. And it means that the government itself has not had the capacity.
How advanced agriculture is that country anyway? I mean, we're talking about resources here, not high technology.
Yes, but I agree. But when you look at Africa in principle, they are predominantly agricultural producing countries, but they are blessed effectively with a lot of mineral wealth. The fact is, the mineral wealth themselves are controlled by the multinational companies, and the terms and conditionalities by which those products actually leave the country, the fact that the income that comes back is not as much as you would otherwise think. But when it does, it means that corruption is a play here, as you mentioned.
What I infer from your remarks, Ayo Johnson, is that such enormous God-given natural wealth is not just a blessing, it could as well be a very serious curse too. Now, going to New York and Bissau, I will come back to you in London, Basan, the coup. Now, are you familiar with the name CBG, a company? It's short for a company in charge of the bauxite.
No, but I'm really familiar with...
Okay, it is the main player, Mr. Biku. It is for your information and our viewership. It is the main player in the bauxite industry, universally speaking. And 41% of this CBG company, in charge of that country's bauxite reserves, is owned by the government of Guinea, and 51% by a consortium made up of Alcoa and Alcan, both American, if not U.S., multinational corporations. Now, can you be kind enough to tell me about the contributions made to that country, that is Guinea, in terms of these predatory multinational corporation deals?
You just said you have 51% of the bauxite owned by a foreign company, and only 41 goes to the government. Those contracts have to be reviewed. I remember I spoke with the Prime Minister Suare about those companies that own the mineral, and how it's important to review the contract in order to make sure that the benefit goes to the people. But now those companies are holding, they don't want to review the government to review the contract. But the fact is this: even though they review the contract and you have the benefit that have to go to the people, but the government is not leading. There is no government. There is no leader. You have a president that was sick. He surrounds himself by the Susu, who is the minority ethnic, 10%. And the Pearl and the Malinke, the majority, were excluded. So what happened is you have only businessmen. You have the ministers.
You spoke about